Hey everybody, we've got about 1 minute till we're gonna start. I'm gonna go ahead and start the recording for the meeting.
Recording in progress.
Madam Chair, we're ready whenever you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Sandy City Council meeting. This is Tuesday, March 3rd. Hopefully we have a fairly short agenda tonight. We shall see. We always start our meetings off with a prayer and a pledge, and then we go into the agenda. We have general citizen comment at 6 p.m. And so at that point in time, we will take comments from any members of the public who are here to speak on any of our agenda items. I'm looking for a volunteer for the prayer. Shane Pace, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Our Father in heaven, we come before thee this evening, grateful for the opportunity to live in this wonderful community. We're grateful for the residents who live here and for the lives that they live. We're grateful, Father, for this city council and this mayor and for their efforts to lead this city in the direction that it needs to go. And we pray that that would please bless our elected officials, that they might make good decisions and that they might continue to lead us in the right direction. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you. Will everyone please rise and we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Before we go into introductions, I do want to tell you guys, anyone that's here to speak to the council tonight on any issues at 6 p.m., please fill out a blue card in the back of the room, and we'll call you up to the microphone when it's time to speak. All right, Mr. Fratto, let's start introductions.
Of course, thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Dustin Fratto. I'm with the City Council office. There are a couple other council staff members in the back of the room, Justin Sorensen and Liz Terrio.
My name's Tracy. I'm counsel for the council.
Chris Edwards with the council office. Chris Nickel, District 3.
Marcy Hausman, District 4.
Cindy Sharkey, at large.
Allison Stroud, District 2.
Brooke D'Souza, at large.
Aaron DeKaiser, at large.
I'm Mayor Monica Soltansky.
I'm Shane Pace, City Administrator.
Lynn Pace, City Attorney.
I know we have our last city council member here. She'll be joining us any second. That's Brooke Christensen. She's here too. All right, we'll go ahead and go into the agenda. Item number 1 is the church rezone. And Jake Warner, I'll invite you down to present to us.
Good evening, City Council. Good to be with you again. For the public, my name is Jake Warner, Long Range Planning Manager for Sandy City. Community Development Department has received a rezone application from Matt Sneed of the Move Group for property located at 166 East, 106 South. Property, there's one parcel that's approximately 1.94 acres. The request is to rezone the property from the R140A zone to the R110 zone. The R140A zone is a residential, single-family residential zone that requires 40,000 square foot minimum lot size with farm animal rights, and the R110 zone is a single-family residential zone that requires a minimum of 10,000 square feet per lot. The property is surrounded by other properties that are zoned R120 and R210 to the north, R140A to the east, R110 to the south and to the west. The property is designated as low-density neighborhood on our future land use map, as are the properties to the east, south, and west. And then the property to the properties across 106 South to the north are also designated low-density neighborhood and medium-density neighborhood. A neighborhood meeting was held on February 19th. Sorry, that was the Planning Commission date. A neighborhood meeting was held, and subsequent to that, on February 19th, a Planning Commission meeting was held on February 19th. The applicant has submitted a concept plan. The applicant, there is a existing church building on the property and a caretaker home, which is in the southwest corner. The applicant is intending to keep both of those buildings. The church building would require a modified site plan application if the rezone is approved to accommodate revisions, necessary revisions to access, parking, landscaping, those type of things. And then they are proposing to subdivide the property to create 3 new lots, which would be single-family residential lots, and the existing caretaker house would take up one of those proposed new residential lots. Religious or cultural activity is a conditional use in both of the zones, both the existing and the proposed zone. So the church building, even though it's a non-residential use, would still be an allowed use in both zones. With that, the application is a legislative item. As I mentioned, it was presented to the Planning Commission in a public hearing. That public hearing was held and is being presented tonight as an informational item to you as the final decision maker on the application, and then is scheduled to come back to you on March 10th for a decision. The applicant, Matt Sneed, is present and prepared to address you if requested, and staff is available for questions as well.
Mr. Sneed, if you would like to come down and provide some information to us, we are happy to hear it.
Hi, my name is Matt Sneed. I live at 5143 South Chinook Way in Murray, Utah. I represent the applicant on this application. And yeah, this one's pretty straightforward. We've met with Planning Department a couple times to go through a couple of different versions of what zone and what layout would work best. And we settled on this where it had the least impact and fit as well with the neighborhood as possible. There will be those 2 new lots that are accessed off that road to the west, and then the existing home that will now be accessed off to the west. We will be redoing the parking lot, the parking spots, the layout, some entry points for the church, but it will be still being used as a church. We're pretty far ahead on figuring out any other items to address as far as what we'll address in the actual site plan and subdivision process. But we think this fits with the neighborhood with the least amount of impact on the residents and fits with the general plan as we reviewed with planning department. That's everything unless you guys have questions.
Hold on a sec. Council, do we have any questions for either Jake or for the applicant? Ms. D'Souza, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. You kind of, I think, touched on my question in what you had just said, but my curiosity is on the direction of the ingress egress of the lots. So it's going to be on this Crest Ridge Drive.
Yeah, which is actually Hollow Bend. It got mislabeled.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was confused on where that was too, so.
Yeah.
Since you brought up the road, if I could, the road was originally improved as secondary access for the subdivision to the south. It does not meet our current standards for a road cross-section. Applicant is aware of that. We've had discussions. They've been heavily involved with Public Works and planning on that and looking for how that's going to be handled. And so that would be handled if the rezone is approved with the subdivision application. However, just wanted to put that on the record that that is an issue we're aware of and working through, and already had several meetings on that and down the road. As such, that along the lines of that issue, the subdivision to the south is an HOA. It's my understanding that it's primarily an HOA just for maintenance of the improvements along that road, and so there would be an HOA involved. The applicant, Mr. Sneed, is aware of that and has had contact with them, and there would need to be a resolution on who maintains what in the future if this application were to move forward. The city code requires that adjacent property owners maintain park strips, those adjacent right-of-way improvements, and so there would just need to be an agreement worked through between Mr. Sneed and the HOA on that.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful information. And my thought process kind of goes to some thoughts that I had when we did the general plan update in single homes that their ingress and egress is along major roads, and that creates problems with traffic as traffic's busier. And so knowing that they're going to be on I don't know how you classify that road, but a neighborhood road that then they can enter the main road going forward is kind of what I was looking for. So there wouldn't be any individual home access on 106th in this situation. Okay.
And we've reduced the church from 2 access points down to 1.
Okay, thank you. That's my question.
That was my only question about the driveway access, so thank you for doing that. And those seem to be the only questions that we've got. As Jake said, this was an information item tonight, and our plan is to put it on the agenda for a voting item for next week. All right, second item on the agenda is you too, Jake. That's the Fortner rezone.
Yeah, good to be back with you. Ben Child with Stanson Development has submitted a rezone application for property at 8564 South, 10th East. It's actually 2 parcels. Together, it's approximately 0.65 acres. The property was annexed into the city a year ago, and at that time, it was given the R110 zone. The applicant is requesting a rezone of the property from that R110 zone to an RM12 zone. The RM12 zone is a multifamily residential zone of up to 12 units per acre. The property is surrounded by unincorporated county property to the north, and property to the east is also zoned RM12 and R210. The property to the south is zoned R210, and then the property to the west is zoned SDR17. The R2 zones are duplex zones. The SD is a special development district, kind of a customized zone, but largely along the lines of the R17 zone, our base R17 zone. If you look at the future land use map in our general plan, there's kind of a missing puzzle piece for this property because that area was unincorporated at the time that the general plan was approved. However, in the general plan, we do anticipate these unincorporated areas coming into the city. So in that other window, kind of on the lower right or lower middle, you kind of see that missing puzzle piece for that area. The subject property is designated as a medium density neighborhood in our annexation plan and the general plan. And the medium density neighborhood land use designation allows for up to 12 units per acre. If you look at the surrounding properties, the properties to the east are also designated medium density neighborhood. Property to the south is also medium. Property to the west is low density neighborhood. And then the property to the north, which is not yet annexed into the city, is also designated as medium density neighborhood. The applicant has submitted a concept plan. The applicant is proposing a duplex and a fourplex, 6 units on the property. The applicant has submitted architectural renderings. Those renderings have changed since prior to the neighborhood meeting. At the neighborhood meeting, there were some concerns about a more modern looking architecture that the applicant was considering at that time, and has revised and provided this revised conceptual elevations. Again, a neighborhood meeting was held on January 21st for this, and the Planning Commission meeting was held on February 19th as required by state code. That Planning Commission meeting was a public hearing. Again, as a legislative item, it is now being presented to you tonight as an informational item, and then it's scheduled to be brought back to you on March 10th. Can't believe it's March already, sorry. On March 10th for decision. Let me just mention one more thing. There was a lot of discussion at the Planning Commission meeting about lack of improvements on 10th East. The city engineer has been working with Salt Lake County. Salt Lake County is preparing a project along 10th East that would complete the improvements from the full improvements, just several properties to the north of here, and then extending down to 86, well, and around the corner on 8600 South. So the county is preparing a project to do the improvements. Regardless, it would be the city's practice to require those improvements if the county property does not proceed. And so improvements on 10th East will be provided one way or another, whether that's through the county or through the developer themselves, if this project were to move forward. Both 8600 South and 10th East are designated in our master transportation plan as major collectors, which would be 3 lanes at an 82-foot right-of-way. I mentioned the applicant is Ben Child. He is present, but his partner Josh Becker is here, prepared to address the council if you desire, and again, staff is available for questions.
All right, be happy to hear from the applicant if the applicant would like to speak to us. Come on down.
Yeah, my name is Josh Becker, and I'm here representing the applicant. Can I scroll back? Just
sure.
Yeah, that worked, I guess. Oops. Well, I guess that works too. So as was mentioned, I mean, we got involved because Jolene Fortner, who lives on the property, she'd like to stay in Sandy, obviously, and was looking for a way to stay here and transition from a single-family residential home to something a little more manageable. You know, she's getting later in years and wanted to do something that she didn't have to maintain so much property in such a big house. And so she requested that we take a look at what we could find first, and there isn't much in Sandy that kind of targets that demographic. And so we started doing research on what it would take to annex her property first, and then get it rezoned and build something for her so she could stay there. And in doing our research, we found that Sandy, you know, kind of has targeted this missing middle. between the apartment complexes and the single-family residential. And they've designated areas where this works, and this just happened to be one of the areas. So that was kind of what started the process. As was mentioned, the stuff to the north is still in the county, but it's a triplex that is adjacent to the north of our property. There's a duplex adjacent to the south, well, our property, her property. There's no connectivity to the west, but it's R17 and currently being developed, like they're moving dirt back there now. And then to the east is this RM12, right? And so as we looked at it and we've been working with staff, we've tried to target some transition from the R17 through to that RM12 zone to the east. We're not trying to get 12 units to the acre. It's actually closer to 10 or just under 10. But we did a duplex in the back next to the other duplex and the triplex that are both to the north and to the south. And then a townhouse style fourplex on 1000 East, which we feel like provides that transition from the RM12 that's directly to the east. It stays, you know, kind of in line with what's to the north and to the south, and then being no connectivity to the west. But it provides a backyard and a little bit of a buffer so that it doesn't feel so, you know, multifamily-esque, if you will. That said, as was also mentioned during the neighborhood meeting and then the planning and zoning meeting, it was expressed, you know, there were a couple concerns expressed. One being improvements, which we are well aware of need to happen and will happen one way or another. You know, we'll dedicate that property or it'll be taken depending on which happens first, and provide those improvements. The off-street parking was one, which we will also provide, right, via driveways and garages, etc. And then traffic was mentioned in both meetings as well. And so in doing our study on traffic, what we're proposing would generate approximately 42 trips per day. If we went single-family residential, it would generate approximately 40 trips per day. So there's really no difference. I mean, 42 trips per day doesn't even trigger any type of study, but it's still, you know, though that item became kind of negligible, I guess. And then we also feel like we're hitting that missing middle, if you will, by providing a place for Jolene to stay, and then we'll sell the other homes for people who are looking for something that's a little bit more attainable, and, you know, the moderate level income folks that would like to be in Sandy, and there's really nothing for them to do. So, or not a lot of options for them to live. So. And then, as was also mentioned, these are on roads and close to an intersection that would warrant this type of development. So we feel like it fits the bill for everything that the city is after, and you know, fortunately enough, it will help Jolene stay in her home. So anyway, thank you.
Hang there just in case.
Yeah.
Council, do we have questions for Jake or for the applicant? Ms. Hausman. Okay. Jake.
Thank you for that, though. I appreciate it. First, I love that he referenced our plan, like, did your homework. Really appreciate that. I know one of the things we talked about throughout all of our housing workshops, and we will continue to talk about, is our tools for ensuring this remains owner-occupied. We're encouraging home ownership, not rental property, et cetera. We're trying to ensure that we fill in this missing middle, but to make home ownership a reality for people. So how does that show up in this particular rezone? Obviously, the intent is to allow her to stay in her home, which takes care of that home. But what are we thinking about the other two? Has that discussion happened?
Yeah, so a couple of things. As you're aware, and as we'll discuss more next week with our joint workshop with the Planning Commission, City has kicked off a comprehensive code rewrite. From our perspective, a big reason for that is to align the tools that we have with the vision that is now in place. And so when we get applications in the interim, we have to deal with the tools that we have currently. And, for example, we've tried to work with the applicant on some different ways to lay this out, and we're somewhat restricted by the tools that we have, and we think that we might have better infill tools that better address some of the concerns in the future for infill development. That being said, we try and establish expectations with our applicants based on what we've heard. We are very limited right now on the staff level at requiring owner occupancy. We can encourage it. We can tell applicants that you as elected officials have, at least from my perspective, made it clear that that is a desire of yours. And, I wasn't sure going into his applicant if they were proposing to keep them all as rentals, but we had that discussion, and that is not their intent, their stated intent to keep them as rentals. But at our level, with the tools that we have right now, there's not a lot that we can do from the staff level at requiring something like owner occupancy. So we have those discussions with the applicants. We try and kind of help guide them in a direction that we think will be palatable based on things we've heard from you and things in the general plan. But we also have to work with the tools that we currently have.
Thank you. And I, reading through the minutes, the Planning Commission had a significant discussion on this, but I didn't see, at least in my read through, that specific a recommendation around that coming from them. It was just they forwarded a positive recommendation. Did in your professional opinion, is that something that we should be talking about, or do you feel that the process that we're about to go through is going to clarify the tools we have moving forward, and you're comfortable with kind of what has been recommended to us from the Planning Commission?
So as a legislative item, the Planning Commission's role is to make a recommendation on the application before them. There was a lot of discussion about these things at the Planning Commission, and you may not get a sense of that from the minutes. They're pretty boiled down. But they had a lot of discussion about a lot of these issues, and they wrestled with it a little bit, how to proceed. I think you see that in the vote, that it was a 4-2 vote. So generally in favor of the vision, and I think they're anxious as well to have good tools to codify some of the mitigation measures so that it's not a constant conflict.
Right. Okay. Oh, please.
So Jake is correct. I mean, the Planning Commission is very supportive of the general plan, and I mean they're the ones who sent that on. That is their main body who reviews that as the land use authority for the city. But in looking at I go along with Jake on this, but I did want to mention one thing in looking at properties that will come in, and surely they will before we get the complete codification done, of which we have started. We are going to have to find ways to look at that and tools to use on that. I would like to, there are some mechanisms. Everybody is interested in homeowner occupancy and making sure that we have sufficient amounts of that, and that the whole project doesn't turn to rental that we've seen in some other areas that we approved a few years ago. I won't specifically, but I know you're all aware of it, and that's brought concerns, that we deal with every time we bring a rezoning. So there are some ways, and I think that was something that Lynn is going to discuss in the next couple meetings down the road, is on your agenda to discuss some of the ways that we can look at that. He may be able to answer a few of those specifically in the meantime till we get those in place, but there are some things that is going to be discussed and is on the future agendas. I think it's April 28th or one of those, that we're going to have that discussion with you about certain things that can be done currently to help with owner occupancy and to make that happen and assure that they stay that way. But I would probably, most of those are legal issues, and I would probably defer some of that discussion that Lynn could address as far as some of the things we could do currently, rather than, that we don't have to wait till the whole thing is done in case we have these come in until we're finished working on the other with the council.
Thank you. And I guess the only other thing I would say is I'd be interested in my colleagues' thoughts on that, specifically what is our stopgap measure until we do have those tools. And I mean, I'm open to feedback on that, but that's really the question that I have here. I think it's obviously the kind of thing we are looking for, especially Councilwoman D'Souza has brought forward housing for the 55 and up. That's all one level and all of the things that are needed. So there's a lot obviously that is aligned. I just have that one burning question. So thank you both.
Ms. D'Souza.
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions. The first one is I want to understand the improvements that are needed. Is there still an open unused irrigation ditch along 10th there?
I believe so, yep.
So when you talk about improvements being done either by the county, city, whatever, or the developer, what improvements specifically are you talking about?
So it's hard to see on this aerial image, but I believe on the very north end of this image, you do have full right-of-way improvements, which would include additional dedication of property and park strip and sidewalk, or maybe curb-adjacent sidewalk. I can't remember what's there, but the county the county project anticipates extending those improvements all the way down and kind of around the corner on 8600 South. And as I mentioned, our city engineer, Brittany Ward, has been working with the county on that and could address the specifics.
Do you mind if I share? Thank you. Brittany Ward, city engineer. Salt Lake County got a grant to install sidewalk and curb and gutter along the west side of 10th East, beginning at the northern end where the sidewalk dead ends. It'll be along the entire frontage of 10th East and then wrap around the corner and connect to where the new development in Sandy had come in. Although this area has already been annexed into Sandy City, they've been very good to work with. They're still moving forward with the contract that they have with the engineer to design the project, as well as funding the match for us. So it's been really nice working with them. The improvements that will be installed as part of this project include sidewalk and curb and gutter, and then asphalt with pavement widening. And so there will be a southbound right turn pocket as well as a southbound left turn pocket installed. An ADA ramp will get put in on the northwest corner of the intersection. A crosswalk will be installed across that north leg, so crossing 10th East. For this Fortner property, I am requiring that they dedicate the full right-of-way needed for the 82-foot major collector roadway cross-section, and they will be required to install improvements as well. I'm not sure if the county project is going to come in first or if the Fortner is going to come in first with their development, but we'll balance that and make negotiations onto who installs those improvements first between the county and the Fortner property. There is an open irrigation ditch along the west side of 10th East. It still exists today, and that's one of the main reasons why we haven't been able to put improvements along 10th East so far, because of the major expense of that, and the county is addressing that and putting in that storm drain infrastructure needed as part of their project.
Okay, so the irrigation ditch that exists, there's not currently active irrigation water flowing through that anymore, is there?
I don't know. I don't
Okay.
think so.
And so that will be covered with a storm drain system installed, and then, so cars aren't going to be driving potentially into it, or it increases the shoulder, I'm assuming, too, on 10th East.
Correct. Yeah, we haven't gotten into a deep dive into the utility design yet.
Okay.
So I'm not sure how big of a pipe or where that'll be placed underground, or if it's just going to end up being just surface runoff that's needed. We still have yet to do those storm drain calculations.
Okay. And then my other question, I think, is for Jake. In terms of this parcel, is it still going to remain one parcel?
It's currently 2 parcels. Its
Okay.
address, it actually has the same address, but it's currently 2 parcels.
Yeah.
So if the project were to proceed, they would need to follow up the rezone with a subdivision application. Through that subdivision application, they would take those 2 parcels and create 6 separate parcels for each of the units. So each of the units, the yard space and so forth. And so,
Is that a requirement, or is that an option?
so they would, I'm trying to, I guess, anticipate why you're asking that, but if they were to not subdivide for individual sellable units, they would need to probably do a subdivision still, but it would be more to address the joining of the 2 parcels and the improvements, the site improvements for those units.
Okay. And yes, I'm asking in kind of playing off of what Council Member Houseman was talking about in some of the necessary steps to create a sellable product. And if it's not parceled out, that becomes challenging.
Based on the zoning, at the staff level, with the subdivision subsequent to a rezone, we would not be able to require them through the zone to subdivide those 6 units into sellable properties.
Okay. Thank you. That answers my question.
Can you repeat that last, what was your question, the last one, Brooke? Sorry.
Oh,
And
you had it. If you want to repeat
Yeah.
it.
So, if the zone were to be approved, they would have rights to whatever the zone allows. And the zone does not require an
individually
owner
parceled?
occupancy or individually subdivided, parcels for those units, so.
Okay. And can I see the applicant rec one more time? You're planning on parceling this out,
Yes, I
right?
have no
Making it
desire to
okay.
townhomes.
Okay. And
Sorry.
now,
Yes, the
yeah.
plan is to,
Okay.
subdivide them. It'll be 6 individually platted homes. They will be, fee simple. They'll be sold.
Okay.
Jolene will keep 1, and then the other 5 will be sold.
Did you happen to look at other zones that may allow you the flexibility to do this?
We did. We looked at a few. There's really, it would be RM10 or RM12, but because of the dedication up front and then the width of the lots, how much property is left over, et cetera, and then we wanted to have yards, et cetera, to provide that buffer between the single family that's to the west and these, this duplex without, putting her in the same position she's in right now, which is too much property to maintain, right?
So with the
So-
sidewalk, proposed sidewalk easement, that you had to include that? And so the R112 was the only zone that you could do this?
RM12.
RM12 was the only, R110 you couldn't do this in because of that dedication of the sidewalk, is that correct?
Well, that setbacks, the size of yards, the size of the lots, the width of the lots. There's a lot of, because we've gone through several iterations, just working on access, working on mitigating traffic, working on a lot of it. And quite frankly, it may be whittled down even more to where we can't even do the full 6. But what I didn't want to do is come before you and say, hey, we propose 5, and then be able to build 6 and build 6 and have it be a bait and switch situation.
Thank you for that.
So we just went in and said, look, this is the max we're able to get. And there's a real possibility that we don't get all 6, that we do a triplex up front and a duplex behind. That's a real possibility, but we didn't want to put that forward this early just because if that doesn't happen, we would prefer to do the 4-plex up front and the duplex behind.
Thank you. I have some questions for Jake. Would the PUD zone allow for greater flexibility?
The PUD zone is typically, the way it's structured, it works better for bigger properties.
Okay.
I believe that our code requires that properties over 5 acres have to use the PUD. There are some nice things about the PUD, but it is very limiting as far as smaller infill development. It would make it very difficult to develop this property.
Is the road inside the subdivision, would it be maintained by Sandy?
That would be a private lane. I mentioned some of the restrictions that our current zoning, that we have to deal with. We've looked at restructuring how these units lay out and so forth, but currently a private lane is only allowed to provide access to 2 units. So, we couldn't use that private lane to access maybe additional units in the back or anything like that.
Or flip the garages to the west?
Or
Is that
flip
what-
them,
okay.
exactly. So when I talk about the tools that we have, we're trying to encourage the applicant to move forward in a way that mitigates the impacts as best as possible, but we anticipate that we'll be able to address these better for infill development with our code rewrite. You asked about a different zone, even the applicant mentioned an RM10. I calculate as density at 9 units per acre. With an RM12, that gives you 7.8, so they would be allowed 7. But there are other factors, as you mentioned, setbacks and so forth. There's a minimum area requirement per unit, and so the applicant wants 6 units on this property, is hopeful to have 6 units on this property, and we don't see that he could have any more than that. And even though his density's at a 9, the RM10, the minimum area requirements and setbacks and so forth associated with the RM10 zone would further limit that number.
So I like the aspect of this is an owner-occupants tend to take care of their properties a lot better. And so I would like the council to talk about some type of agreement that we can make sure that they are single family and offered on the open market. I think maybe flipping the garages to exit on the west would disguise the property or make it blend in a little bit better. That way you're also not seeing the cars in the driveway. You're keeping that in the subdivision. And I don't know, that would be a pretty easy change to get going, to have the best development possible that we could.
Unfortunately, it's not allowed under our current tools, but we looked at that as well in trying to work with them on the best layout possible. We don't dictate their concept plan, but we encourage along the lines of what we think would be more palatable to you as decision makers and to the public, and to address potential impacts. So we encourage, and we've looked at a lot of different scenarios and with the limitations.
With infill, I feel this is going to be, we've never really liked back-facing garages or allow people to have back-facing access abut each other. So this is what we're going to see from now on. So I would really like to prioritize some of these little key things to maximize the amount of homes somebody can put. I know that sounds really bad, but maximize it to a certain, it varies every parcel, so, and not necessarily high density, medium density, or low density like this is being proposed. That's it. Thanks.
Ms. Stroud?
Thank you. I've got kind of a few questions all over the place. And I love the discussion and the willingness for you guys to make sure that these are owner-occupied housing units. And I was just wondering about, the area as a whole. Do we have information on the current ownership patterns in this area?
So the adjoining properties, there are several rental units in the area, duplexes and apartments, apartments across the street to the east, duplexes also to the east and to the south, a threeplex to the north. I believe the owner of the property to the north also lives in that property. I would assume that that most of the other duplexes and of course the apartments are rental product. But I don't know for sure if the owners of those duplexes also live on the property. I believe the owner of the threeplex does to the north, but I'm not sure of the other duplexes in the area. So I believe that they're, as far as the attached product in the area, I believe that they're mostly rental units. The new development to the west, as we've talked about, is an SDR 17. So those are single-family homes on 7,000 square foot minimum lot sizes. I don't know what the actual lot sizes are in that subdivision, but and those would be a for sale product, but don't know. Again, that's under development currently.
I think a lot of this, for me, is keeping stability in the neighborhood. And this area, I think, and that's why I was asking that question, has a lot of rental units, which, you just get a lot of turnover to it. And the neighborhood is looking for stability. Moving in, raising kids, just building those community ties and community bonds. I'd like to see something where we could start looking at more home ownership, and whether that's deed restricting, something to make sure that it's not, well, I'm going to go buy the home, but then I'll put it in as a rental. I think that would help with a lot of concerns. Another concern that I have, go back to, so these are townhomes, correct?
Yes.
So they are tall, and to have those 4 units right up front, sorry, I'm trying to scroll through, that's here somewhere. Looking at those right off the street, that it puts a very different feel in that neighborhood. When you have 4 of them together versus, there's a lot of the R210. I think most of it on here is R210, aside from the county parcel, in that area, which are the duplexes, not 4 units that are townhomes that are taller. What would the difference be of the R210 of how many units versus the RM12? I'm trying to keep continuity with the area, knowing that we have single-family lots, a little bit smaller lots than kind of our R18, to the back with the Larson, I think it was, the Larson rezone. But even in that surrounding area, it's, primarily that R210. It's not 4 taller townhomes that are right there on 10th East. We've got the duplexes. So what, for the amount of property that's there, what would just an R210 look like?
I think going to
is it possible?
Any other zone would reduce the number of units there. The R210 is a duplex zone that requires 10,000 square feet per duplex. And that would be 0.68 of an acre. And they currently have 0.65 of an acre, and they will be providing some dedication for the right-of-way. So it appears that it would limit it to 2 duplexes
So 4 units versus 6.
And that's, yeah, that's part of the struggle we've had, is looking at different options with the size and shape of the property and our existing zoning regulations. So, but yes, so, yeah, 30,000, so they would need 30,000 square feet for 3 duplexes, and that's more than what they currently have.
And for the record, I'm fine with 4 units instead of 6. But I really am trying to look for something that we seem to be piecemealing a lot of things in this area, of putting it together. Is there some way to provide more continuity where, oh, this is a duplex, this is a duplex? You know, when we're looking at multifamily housing, not the single home, you know, an R110 as it's currently zoned, but something else that the surrounding neighbors have. And so I would be more interested in looking at an R210, something that the neighbors have, that it doesn't look so piecemeal, you know, and provides, you know, we have a 10th East, is, you know, a major corridor along there where people aren't driving through and going, okay, we've got all of these different things that we're looking at. You know, and then just looking at the precedent that it's setting for the future. You know, saying, okay, well, you know, we have this medium density. How many other parcels are going to follow along with that, along that area? And what does that look like? But, you know, that R210 just seems to be a little more respectful for the property owners in that surrounding area, and to bring more continuity to it. So I would be a lot more open to looking at an R210 versus putting in an RM12.
For the record, can I just correct something that I said? It may not reduce it to 4. A single-family home is allowed in an R210, so potentially 4 or 5. Just for the record.
But it gets that block of 4 townhomes, and it wouldn't allow that block of 4 right there along 10th East.
Right.
Because it would allow 2.
Right.
I mean, 2, and then somehow putting in, if there was one in the back, something. But at least it looks more fitting for the neighborhood, and the feel is a little more similar with the surrounding homes with an R210, because that seems to be, at least that.
The height could still be there if that's what you're trying to resolve. You know, our residential zones allow for up to 35 feet, so any one of those properties could already develop up to, or build something up to 35 feet. They're in the county, but there are some large structures in that area.
There are.
But it would reduce the massing of the building, but the height could still be there.
And that's and the height, but it is just that larger block of homes. I mean, that's, you know, to the north, the A1 right now, but to the east, R210, and then the RM12. There is one there, but then R210, and then the SD17. So it seems that the R210 would be more congruent and a better fit for a potential rezone if we do move forward with that. And that's something I think that maybe we should look at to try to keep the continuity of the neighborhood. You know, just kind of a suggestion. So that's it. Thank you.
Ms. Christensen.
Okay, so I actually like the R210 as well. I think it will look better in that neighborhood. There is already a lot of townhomes in that, but they're not that dense along the frontage. I did notice that in the Planning Commission notes, 11 of the neighbors came out to talk against this, which I think is a significant amount of people in the neighborhood. Probably hits almost all their neighbors. And then what type of price point for selling? I know it's very general, but like, do you have like an estimate of what these would sell for? I'm asking just because, are we really hitting the missing middle? Yeah, but are we really hitting that, or is it?
Again, density, you go to a duplex and it's gonna command a lot more money, right? I mean, just quite frankly, like, because what ends up happening is you build a duplex, you build a home, you build anything, and say you've got a 7,000 square foot lot with 10-foot setbacks, right? So you build to the setbacks, right? And so if we were to build duplexes, then we'd build to the setbacks. If we were to build a fourplex, we'd build to the setbacks. So a fourplex is going to be smaller individual homes, but amassing wise, if you're concerned about 2-story and hitting the setbacks, et cetera, it's going to be, it's a square footage question, right? So if you build a 2,000 square foot fourplex that each unit's 2,000 square feet, or 2 4,000 square foot sides of a duplex, then the fourplex is going to sell, or the duplex is going to sell for, you know, 400,000, and the duplex is going to sell for 6, right?
So both still hit the middle.
So, and that's just that's probably low, to be honest.
Yeah,
That's
no,
that's
I
my
agree.
build costs are $200 a square foot. So if you're a 2,000 square foot home, that's $400,000 to build it, and then 20% goes to the land, so now you're up to 480, and then a 20% margin, you're up to 5 something on a fourplex.
Yeah.
And then on a duplex, it's going to be 600,000 in build, let's say, and then 20% is another 120. You're up to 720, and a 20% margin, you're just north of 800.
Okay. Thank
Madam
you.
Chair?
Yeah.
Can I, speaking to that zone, that would kind of take away from the ownership, because a duplex has single ownership, so you would have a rental regardless in the other side, right? If you were to build duplexes, I'm talking about duplexes. Yes, there's one type of ownership in a duplex, because it's singular plat, or singular parcel. I know, but the zone that you guys like would be duplexes. The one that you're stating is duplexes. And so I'm just pointing out that we still have, it creates a rental situation. Just wanted to point that out.
What's the twin home then? I think the difference.
So yeah, I mean, if we're gonna get specific, there's duplexes and twin homes, and both of those housing types are allowed in that zone. So you're right, that a duplex is typically single ownership, 2 units, single ownership, but the 2 is 2 units per 10,000 square feet. They can do 2 attached, and that could either be a duplex or a twin home. So going back to the zone, it could be either, but you're right. The terminology, to be specific, is.
And I guess that was the question, is, so the difference of a duplex versus a twin home, could they be?
A twin home is a duplex that is subdivided so that it could be sold off individually.
So they could be?
Both, yep.
And what is a twin home
A
zoning?
twin home is just, a twin home and a duplex could look exactly the same, except they have a property line down the middle.
What is the zone for it, for a twin
Oh,
home?
R210. That's what I'm saying, is in the R210 zone, both of those housing unit types are allowed. We've been saying duplex, but both a twin home and a duplex would be allowed.
So, but they could be each individual owner occupied?
They
It wouldn't
could
have
be.
to be, okay.
Yep.
So it could be either one.
It's an important clarification, right? Because it.
I think Jake's explaining it, just, so he's saying that if you have a twin home, they have a line down the middle, those could be sold, that's what they're done.
Yeah.
Those could be owner occupancy. When you have a duplex, it has one lot, so usually you have an owner that owns the full lot, lives on one side, rents the other side, or rents both sides.
And that's the word we've been
That's
using.
a
And so
yeah.
that, I probably created that confusion, so I apologize, but both unit types are allowed in the R210 zone.
And that would be up to, would we be doing some sort of development agreement to say this is?
Well, again,
or-
it's like the RM zone. We can't require one over the other. Both are allowed. And so at the staff level, we would not be able to dictate what that ownership looks like, whether it's a duplex or a twin home.
It could be either.
Both are allowed by the zone, so.
Okay.
Ms. D'Souza.
Thank you. I just, in listening to the conversation with colleagues, the one thing I have to say, I get a little hesitant about looking at, even talking about zones that the applicant hasn't requested. For me, it is about, yes or no, kind of taking into account what they've requested as opposed, so if there is thought or consideration of having further discussion about, you know, a different zone, I'm not comfortable having that with this application. If the applicant wants to amend their application and bring that forward, you know, that might be one thing. But, you know, I lived in the area for a long time. I still have a home. My daughter lives there. I travel that area very frequently, multiple times a week. And, you know, I understand a lot of the challenges, the irrigation ditch. I actually have an irrigation ditch, the same one. I think it's the same, you know, ownership through my property. You know, and it is kind of a hodgepodge, and I think it's a hodgepodge of zoning because it was county for so long, and county's zoning was a little more lackadaisical, and you got a lot. But if you do drive further, north, there are adjoining homes along 10th East, closer to the 78th, you know, the mid-mark of 10th East and 78th, and so, you know, I know this isn't a decision, but and I'm very curious to hear the neighbors that have come out to also speak tonight to us. This isn't a decision night, but just kind of taking in all of the information that we're hearing and that we're discussing. I just wanted to share kind of where I'm at in my thoughts, and I want to take this on its merit. I'm not interested in changing a zone that wasn't asked for. And I do recognize the hodgepodginess of the area, and so, you know, I'm not sure that anything could really be defined as super continuous or provide a lot of continuity because there is so much diversity in the housing stock in the area. You know, the one thing, you know, Councilmember Nickel, having garages face a different way, stuff like that appeals to me because I do get concerned about adding more frontage to these roads that are getting more traffic. Where I'm trying to come up with ways to reduce the instances of ingress and egress onto main roads. But okay, those are all my comments. Thanks.
So, Jake, can you describe the process by which, we just annexed this in a year ago, you said? So what was the process by which we determined the zoning to be at R110?
So the A1 zone in the county is a weird zone. I probably shouldn't say that. It's an interesting zone. You know, there's some provisions in there that allow an attached product. There's some provisions in there that are more of a rural zoning, but 10,000 square foot lots are allowed in that zone as well. And so when we annex property, we try and bring them in as close as possible, apples to apples, to our zoning, to the Sandy City's zoning. And with the A1, it's kind of difficult. I think we had a zone a few months ago that had previously been A1 in the county and was brought in at an R115 because that was kind of in the area. And again, the A1 zone, from my understanding, is kind of a difficult zone to go from the county to match perfectly to one of Sandy City's zones.
So if it was so difficult, if A1 is so hard to define and transfer into our language, was it because of what's there right now that we decided that R110 was applicable?
I believe that the standard practice has been to bring in A1 to R110. We intentionally try and separate the zoning decisions from the annexation decision, but
I can answer that just a little bit too. When we're annexing properties, we're looking at the closest zone in the county, and oftentimes we just have to take the closest zone in the county that matches the best we can match up with the area. And when we're looking at the A1 zone, the only zone that could really match is a R110, because that is really the only type of residential zone that comes even close to matching some of our areas. So what we had decided years ago with the city council is that we would take the zone that matches closest to what we have, and we wouldn't discuss that as far as, you know, rezoning that as part of the when we annex the property in, but they would have to come back later and apply for a zone that if they wanted something different than what we could match it up with when they came in. So several people have done that, if they then come in and they wanted to develop their properties later, they've come in and then said, hey, we really want this, this is what it was brought in, but we decided with the city council, we wanted you to hear that, and we wanted you to hear the process. If they have to come back, they need to come before the city council. Because there's oftentimes that does not match up perfectly. We do the best they can, and that's why they're back here tonight, is because they're asking for a different zone than what they annexed in with. And that's the best we can do a lot of times, but that is what we've asked them to do through this body, is to bring it back, and you have the authority to give them or not give them the zone.
I understand. I just wondered what the thought process was, because R110 really doesn't match much of anything that's around it. So when we talk about the hodgepodgey nature of what's here, this didn't help. So anyway, I understand that we're back to defining what it ought to be. I
I
understand
got the
that.
thumbs up from our annexation expert, so either James and I are in line with our standard practice, or he just doesn't want to come talk.
So, can you describe the main differences between an RM and an R1 zone in terms of the land use, the design, the site planning, all of those things? What are the main differences between an R1 zone and an RM zone?
I guess the main difference is the housing types that are allowed between the two. An R1 is a single family. That's what the one designates as single family residential zone, whereas the RM is residential multifamily. Single family units are allowed in the R1 or are in the RM, but also additional attached housing product types are allowed in the RM as well.
Setbacks are different?
Setbacks, I'd have to go to the code. I believe that it depends. I mean, from an R16 to an R140, the setbacks are different, ranging from 6 feet to 10 feet. I believe, as far as a side yard setback, off the top of my head, I believe the side yard setback, meaning the perimeter of the RM property being developed, is 8 feet. So they would have to be 8 feet away from their side perimeter boundary. I believe the rear yard is 20. It seems like the front is 20, where, typically with an R1 zone, it's 25 to a garage and 30 to living. But even with that, Sandy City has what we call our residential conservation overlay. And so by right, they can come in, and if they had a porch and a sidewalk to the, a walkway to the sidewalk, they can already reduce that setback. And so even within an R1, there are ways to reduce. In fact, I think that's going to come into play with the rezone we talked about earlier. That existing caretaker house on that church property is too close to that street. And so for that house to stay, I mentioned that was in their intent, but I don't know if that's going to be feasible. For that house to stay, they would probably have to apply the residential conservation overlay to get reduced setbacks, but that is a possibility. So there's flexibility regardless if it's an R1.
So I think that, first of all, I agree with Ms. D'Souza's comments. It's the right of the applicant to make a request. And we respond with a yes or no to the request. I'd rather do that than make a demand of what it should be to get my vote. I respect the private property right. This is, it's over a little over half an acre. When we get into infill projects, and especially the application or the discussion of the new general plan, this is a problem for me. That's part of why I voted no to the adoption of the general plan. We increase density across the entire city, and disproportionately. And so when we get to an infill project of a small size like this, if it's a large infill project, you create your own atmosphere. You create your own new community. When you're talking about half an acre, you're inserting something into an existing neighborhood that may or may not fit. And when you are comparing it to a general plan that hasn't been adopted as a zoning plan, and you get something that you can have the potential of getting something that simply doesn't fit and won't for decades if you ever get there, right? And so this is why I think it's so important to consider the context of an individual application within the neighborhood in which it resides and not to compare it against a general plan, which is a potential vision of a potential future that we aren't zoned for at this point in time. This is not proposed to have an HOA? Since these are all individually no HOA. So attached but individually platted with an expectation, and here we go, right? If there's no HOA, then how do you address a private road? I don't understand how this works. In terms of a vision of what might fit, I appreciate everybody's view of what might fit there or might look good there or might be an improvement there. But I also have some sensitivity to what others have been allowed. So this is part of my discomfort. Recent decisions about what others are allowed or mandated versus the new normal of what is completely different, we get into this issue of inequity, of private property rights and valuation, and it is a problem. It's a problem. We can either look to the future and say, no matter what, we're going to do what we decided by a majority vote we're going to do, or we can just continue to consider what fits in the neighborhood and what matches and what a stretch is possible. A stretch is possible, but a whole rewrite of what we'll allow will lead to some problems with some continuance of a community or a neighborhood identity. So you're getting up to the microphone like you want to say something.
May I?
Okay.
Only if I'm invited. May I?
Yeah.
So you made a comment that I just need to address because I need to make sure that it's addressed. When we brought the general plan, we looked at ranges. And so when you look at these, we're looking at ranges on these. And the general plan also asked the council to look at the character of the area. So I do agree with you in the instance where you said these can be individual, where you're looking at that. And I think that is the city council's job. The general plan looked at that and said there's a ranges of densities in these areas. It doesn't have to be stuck on a 10 or whatever. That's what you're here doing tonight, in my view, is looking at a range. And you're looking at that, and you are looking at the character. Does that match that area? That's what the general plan asks you to do, or does it not? That's, as a body of the city council, you're looking at implementing the general plan, and that is what it asks you to do. So I think you are doing what you're asked to do in the general plan. I think you're simply looking at exactly what the general plan saw and what it's asking you to do, and that's look at a variety. Every one of you have mentioned some type of a different density or some type of a different thing on there. That is what you're supposed to be doing. And that's just my humble opinion about the general plan and looking at that. That's why I am excited about the general plan, and I think you are doing it right. I think by the questions you're asking is exactly what it wants you to do. And it is a range, and it is the character that you're looking at. And if it doesn't fit, then you don't approve it. Or you do approve it if it fits. So I think you are following the general plan by your discussion tonight.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions on this item? This was an information item tonight. It is on the agenda or potential agenda for next week for decision making. So with no more questions, we'll end discussion on this specific item tonight, and we will go to general citizen comment. I do have some blue cards here, and so I'll call on the people who have submitted blue cards, and then we'll call on the people online if they'd like to comment as well. Did Daniel leave? Oh, Mike left. Daniel's here. Okay. So Daniel, come on up. We've got you. 3 minutes is you're allowed, and please, the timer will start when you do. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks for all your consideration. Daniel Ericott. Did you want anything else said?
No.
Yep.
We
very
got
good.
it.
So I appreciate what was brought up. I think those are more in line with the concerns that were expressed in the previous meeting with the general, the precedent that it could potentially set with other similar lots in the area and the aging population there, what might happen with those particular lots, and the impact on the community, keeping it a residential family type community versus a rental property. To the south of 8600 South, we've got a ton of rental places there. Great, we need both in the city. But I appreciate what was said about keeping as much as possible the continuity, of family ownership type stuff. And I believe it was you that pointed out the maintenance. Those tend to get maintained better. I used to live in what we call the Gray Apartments, which is right across 10th East. It's a good spot. The police end up there, on a regular occasion. And that affects the community in a certain way. So I would encourage you to continue to consider the impact and precedent it sets for other properties, and that will be probably coming up before you at some point. And keeping it a family-oriented type place. I don't have a problem with rentals, but I live in the community and want it to be a place that is good to live in 20, 30, 40 years from now. And I assume you do as well. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Ron Larson.
Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate you calling me. Thanks for your time. First of all, I was told that there would not be any allowance for new multifamily dwelling units when I subdivided my property. I'm the property directly to the west, the Larson Development property. The lot that borders that is definitely an SD, R17. SD R17 means that there's a special reason why it's special, and that, I believe, is because of the school. That's what I was told. There's an elementary school nearby, which means they don't want a lot of anything in there that's going to disrupt that school. And they don't want people in there that are going to cause problems. They don't want, businesses that will create an environment that's not protective to the students. That's what I was told. Now, I'm not sure that that's the truth or not, but that's how I understand it. So we're trying to protect the students. We're trying to protect the area. We're trying to protect the neighborhood. And when you go vastly beyond the immediate one or two little multifamily dwelling areas, they are almost all residential, by far. There's church, but by far it's residential. It's just a couple of small pockets that are that. So yeah, there's some stuff stuck in there. Okay, so I disapprove, or I ask that you disapprove of this multi-family dwelling. One, because I was told not to. Two, because we think it might create some problems for the youth. And three, it might lower the value of my properties. Okay, so that is a financial request for me, because I think it will reduce my family as well as other single residences in the area. I think it will reduce the value of those residences. The other thing that I would like to point out is there is almost no on-street parking. He mentioned that there will not be any allowance for any driveways to come from the one that goes inside with entrances from the west. There are like they're lined up. When you look at the plan, these driveways are lined up, boom, 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 boom. There will be no ability for anyone to park on the street unless they block a driveway. And secondly, if they have a very short setback in order to accommodate it, those cars are going to be parked out so that it's sticking out into the sidewalk, or depending on how much park strip you have, how wide your sidewalks are, how much is allowed. Those cars are going to be blocking that sidewalk. And the other thing I wanted to point out is a friend of mine, Larry Astle, was hit by a car when they backed out of the driveway. They hit Larry Astle, and he was put into the hospital, and now he is having to go into a home because of being hit and because of the disabilities and other things, not just because he was hit, but he's also old. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Ron. Shannon Maynard.
Sorry, this makes me really nervous. Public speaking is not my thing. So I'm Shannon Maynard. I live two properties down from where this is being done. I am in the area that will be annexed in by 2027. And they've been talking about my neighbor actually, her home is a single family home, so I don't know where they keep getting that it's a level, but the one at 8550 is actually a single family home. We'll just leave it at that. And then all the other homes in that area that are going to be annexed in, everyone that faces the street is also a single family home. So as to your question earlier, Brooke, all the homes, there are homes that have been built along 10th East. There actually, as I counted today, there are about 10 that have been built within the last, I would say, maybe 7 years. So every home that actually faces 10th East is a single family home. So there may be like duplexes, but they're not right on the street. They're either behind. There's some properties that have 2 homes. There's some properties that have 3 homes. But the ones that actually face 1000 East, they are all single family homes with 1 driveway. So I think that needs to be noted. So I've been a resident of this area for 40 years. I've seen the fields, I've seen the growth in this area. I think it's important to note that the apartments were built in 1986. There was a lot of opposition back then, and a lot of those concerns, what people opposed to back then actually have become reality. There's been a lot of issues with those, including crime and drugs and stuff like that. So I've seen all that. It's in front of my house. It's right across the street. So rentals, I do not want rentals. There's no way to stop these homes from becoming rentals. Sorry. I'm really nervous. And so, like I said, that's a big issue, is how do you stop them from becoming rentals? You can't really stop them from becoming rentals, and that affects me, that affects my kids, that affects my property. It brought up about the decrease in value and all that stuff, so that is a big concern. I believe it's too dense for the area. The 5 driveways is an issue too. The intersection, it's a crazy intersection. It's a dangerous intersection right there on 86 and 10th. There are stuff put in place for that, but it's not in place yet. So we don't know when that's going to be put in place with the Sandy City and all the stuff they're going to be doing. So that's an issue. There is a crosswalk there that is very dangerous for people to cross. We've talked about it in the past, but yeah, I think 5 driveways with that so close to the intersection is just not good, and I would hope that this gets denied and different options looked at in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul O'Brien.
Yes, excuse me, I'm Paul O'Brien. I didn't realize how fast that 3 minutes went, so I'll try not to repeat what other people have already said, but I am not in favor of the Fortner rezone, and I have some thoughts about it. One of the biggest concerns is that We have an intersection right now at 10th East and 8600, which is terrible in terms of trying to drive through that intersection or especially try to walk through the intersection. I have talked to the county. I know what they're doing on the west side, and that is good, but it's not going to help. And because it's only doing the west side, it doesn't help anybody trying to cross 8600. My concern is that a rezone like this will only create more traffic, both pedestrian and automobile traffic. And frankly, the intersection is overused right now. And like the Larson development has already been approved, it's fine, but more cars, more people. Just up the street were approved some duplexes. That's gonna create more traffic. So what I'm asking, read my notes. So I think we're really putting the cart before the horse. I think what we need to do is make sure that we have a safe area for people to both drive and walk before we approve having higher density. I'd also like to, I think it was touched on the planning meeting, and I went there and it was interesting because it was, there were, I counted 12, I think you said 11, but anyway, there were a lot of residents that came out and spoke against it. The only one who actually spoke for it was the gentleman back there who I think he just represents a construction firm. So I mean, the property owner was not here. I mean, none of the people that live around there said, hey, this is a good idea. So that gave me some concern, and wow, I'm running out of time. Okay, I was gonna talk about the, your budget priorities, and I highlighted these because I think safety is a theme there, and making a good place to live, and this intersection really needs to be addressed. I'm going slightly over, but this is important. The map that is being shown as part of the production here.
Thank you. My job's to tell you that we're done so we can hear from everybody else. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Paul, you can go ahead and email us.
Okay,
and
I'll
our
do
staff can
that.
tell you how to do that. And we'd love to hear what you have to say in full.
Okay. Thank
Go
you.
ahead and do that. All right, that's all the blue cards that I have here. If anyone else would like to speak, you're welcome to do that. But let's go ahead, Dustin, when you have a second, and tell our online audience how they can make public comment if they'd like to.
Of course, thank you, Madam Chair. If you're joining us virtually this evening via Zoom and you'd like to comment on any city business, now's the time. Go ahead and click the raise hand button on your screen. I'll call your name in the order in which you raised your hand, and you'll have 3 minutes. Not seeing any hands raised, Madam Chair.
Same. We'll close public comment and move forward in the agenda. We have 2 Planning Commission reappointments, and so I will hand it over to the mayor if you're presenting. Mayor?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. We are asking the council to consider reappointment of Dave Bromley and Ron Mortimer to the Sandy Planning Commission. Dave Bromley has served for 2 terms and has a professional background in property development. Ron Mortimer has served for 3 terms and is a civil engineer and has an engineering background. Both of these existing planning commissioners have served for very long tenure and have bring with them valuable institutional knowledge knowledge of the growth of the city, of the long-term planning strategies of the city, and add valuable professional and community perspective to the Planning Commission. Both have agreed to my great appreciation to serve for another term if approved by the City Council.
Thank you. Council, neither Commissioner Mortimer or Bromley are here tonight, but I'm sure if we have any questions that either the mayor or the Community Development Department can answer them. Any questions? I'd like to, go ahead,
Yeah.
Ms. Nickel.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I've worked with both of these gentlemen, and they are very professional in what they do, and they're very successful at what they do. So I would go ahead and make a motion to approve resolution.
This is an information
Oh,
item
okay,
tonight.
never mind.
Yeah,
All
we
right,
vo-
all right.
we vote next
They're
week.
great.
But thank you for your advocacy and endorsement.
Yes.
And I do want to make the same comments. I have worked with them both, and I think they're outstanding. And I appreciate the fact that they've agreed to continue to serve, and I agree with all of your comments. So is that it on these two items, Council? No further questions or comments? Okay. Going on to the next item on the agenda, that is Ms. Hausman with a proposal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just some additional, I'll just share a couple of thoughts in addition to what you saw in the packet. This proposed amendment is essentially formalizing good governance. You kind of hear me been focusing on that a lot lately. A consolidated staffing schedule that is adopted as part of our annual budget. And any increase in full-time benefit positions should require the same process as any other budget amendment. So that's really kind of what I'm focusing on with this proposed amendment. My focus really is ensuring transparency for taxpayers, so that there's a clear process by which staffing levels grow, and that is done through this amendment. That staffing is adopted through the budget process, and so that's the FTEs that are adopted, and a change to that would simply come to the council for approval. So just kind of providing some oversight of headcount. I think that's good governance, and ensuring taxpayers have insight into the financial obligations that come with that. That's really all I had. It's pretty straightforward.
Anyone with any comments? Ms. Nickel, go ahead.
I really like this idea a lot, and I'm planning on voting for it when it comes back. I was just wondering why the decision was to do full-time benefited. I think that maybe, because this has been done in the past, people have been hired part-time mid-year with the thought that they would increase headcount, next year. So I'd like to see part-time benefited or non-benefited, excluding seasonal. I mean, if you look at it when you bring it back and you think, no, it doesn't apply, then that's fine too.
May I, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think that some of the feedback I received was specifically seasonal, that their needs, departments need, especially like Parks and Recreation, for example, they need some flexibility around seasonal. But if you're asking me to think separately, like in terms of there's part-time seasonal and then there's part-time, is that what you're asking me to
Yes,
look at?
yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, let me take that back. That's why it's the value of a first reading is to hear things like that. So I had not actually considered, the feedback was make sure we're providing flexibility for seasonal.
Yeah.
What is an example of, so is your worry a part-time position becoming a full-time?
Yeah, there were two people hired part-time with the salary savings of whatever it was, and I would like to address that in yours.
Gotcha.
If you think it's outside the lines, then I'm fine with that too.
And you're saying these,
The two individuals were hired.
To distinguish between,
Yes.
they were not hired as seasonal employees. They
Correct.
were hired as part-time to become full-time.
Correct.
I think that, yeah, let me
Okay.
definitely take that back and consider
Awesome.
that for the second reading.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. DeKaiser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few questions. I'm really just trying to understand this. So maybe kind of along the lines of what Councilmember Nickel was talking about in that staffing change. I'm wondering, Councilmember Hausman, if you could elaborate on like specific instances or experiences that have arisen that you feel, need the council to restrict the mayor's authority regarding staffing changes.
Well, first, let me start with your second point, because I don't think that's what this does. We're not talking about restricting mayor's authority. But to your first question, as an example, so a few years ago, administration hired 8 full-time firefighters as a one-time expense, which isn't when you're talking about staffing. You know, staffing is ongoing expenses, benefits, et cetera. And so this was done, and obviously we had conversation around that, but it was done prior to council approval. And so what this kind of addresses is making sure that the process is, that it starts with the council. So we should have had kind of a flipped experience. The council should have been approached for that first, and then move forward with it. So I'm just ensuring that we have a process by which the council approves. And my understanding is if the increase does not require further appropriation, there is no requirement for like a public hearing, a public notice, et cetera. The only time a public hearing would be required is if the approval of the increased FTEs requires an additional appropriation. With an additional appropriation, that sets in motion the public hearing process, public notice, et cetera. But if all we are doing is approving a change to the staffing schedule and no appropriation required, there is no public hearing required, is my understanding. Mr. DeKaiser, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. I'm wondering, and I don't know if you can answer this, Councilmember Hausman, or maybe Mr. Shane Pace can answer this, but was there a change made in the prior administration that this policy kind of reverts back to? I'm not too clear on the history of that, or maybe to Councilmember Hausman, you could speak if those changes have anything to do with this.
I'm not tracking your question. I don't understand it, sorry.
Maybe, Mr. Pace, do you understand the question?
I might. I know that I was not here at the time, but I know during the prior administration of Mayor Bradburn, there was something added to the budget document that allowed movement in between approved budgets, that was put into the budget document at the very top of the staffing document. There are a couple of situations for that. Is that there are times when somebody will decide they want to retire. Not all of our employees say they're going to retire before the budget year starts, and sometimes because they're in a singular position, in other words, there's nobody else that does that job, there's a desire to bring somebody on a couple months before they retire, and so that they can be trained up in that position by the person who's doing that position. I think that was one of the reasons why that was put in place. A second reason, of course, is if you have an employee who goes on FMLA and is on FMLA for 12 weeks, and that work is not being done, hiring a temporary seasonal person to do that job during that time is very helpful. And so I believe that's why, I wasn't here at the time when it happened, but I believe that's why that policy was put in place. It was part of the budget book and was approved by the council. But Brian, you might have more information on that.
Thank you. Councilmember Hausman, do you know how a policy like this works in other cities and what the outcomes of those cases have been?
So what I know, and I'm sorry, I'm looking at this way because I see you on the screen. I'm trying to make eye contact even though you're joining virtually, so I know it's weird because I just realized you're looking at the side of my head. So maybe I should look at the camera. So my understanding is in all cities with our form of government, this is absolutely within the authority of the city council. Like adopting the staffing schedule is part of our budget authority. And so a change to the FTEs, it's an appropriate, it's an appropriate aspect of our budgetary oversight to ask that there be an approval given by the city council. So I wouldn't say that I researched other cities as much as knowing what our governance model looks like and what's appropriate within our governance model.
Okay, thank you. My last question is just whether there was communication with the administration about this, and if so, what their response was.
Yes, that was absolutely part of our process, is making sure that Mr. Pace had a chance to, I should clarify, Mr. Lynn Pace, as the city attorney, had a chance to look at it. We've had discussions and obviously cross-departmental, or I don't know if it's the right word, but between our staff and Mr. Pace as well. So yes.
Okay, thank you. I just want to finish by saying that, I understand the need for oversight in our city's governance, especially regarding budgetary matters, and like you're talking about good governments, which I think is great. I want to approach this from the best policy perspective, but I also want to make sure that the mayor has an ability to act within the budget to have that operational flexibility. She's on the ground, directly engaged with the departments and understands their needs. So the proposal, a little bit initially, and hopefully we can work this out in the future, but it seems to kind of exemplify maybe a lack of trust in leadership, and I just want to make sure that we're rowing in the boat together, like you would say. So, I would definitely consider, you mentioned transparency. I like maybe the idea of doing something like a reporting requirement for staffing changes, but I don't know if I would want to go along with this. And one thing I hope to talk to more later is I just have the analogy in my mind of like a corporate board of directors kind of limiting the CEO's ability to manage their people. And it seems to me that would be counterproductive and maybe an overreach. So I would just want to urge my colleagues to think about this in terms of collaboration and effective governance, and look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you.
Can I, Madam
Please.
Chair? Thank you, Mr. DeKaiser. I know we've heard this a few times now, this comparison to CEO and a board, and I don't think that's an accurate representation of our governance. We are equal bodies, equal branches of government, and I have verified that this is 100% within our lane. So I want to make sure I put your mind at ease there, Mr. DeKaiser, that this is appropriate. And I did take into consideration administration feedback because initially I was, to Ms. Nichols' point, or Councilwoman Nichols' point, originally I had just unilaterally thought about all employees, and it was recommended that we think intentionally about flexibility for seasonal and so just focusing on full-time benefited. So I do believe this is representative of collaborative efforts while also making sure we are thinking about governance. And so I think the other thing I would just really reiterate is as the budget authority and making sure we are clear with taxpayers, staffing decisions, again, those are not one-time expenses. When we exceed or go beyond the FTEs that have been adopted in the staffing schedule, we are in essence creating ongoing salary, ongoing benefits. So I think it's appropriate for us to move forward and continue to talk about this. I appreciate the feedback. I see it differently. I don't see this as all this is saying is if there is a need to go beyond the FTEs that are in the staffing schedule that get adopted as part of the process, all we are asking is come back to the council, have a conversation about that need, and we do an approval process. And again, I want to say it again, because just make sure it's very, very clear. We're not requiring a public hearing for this. This is come to the council, make the case, hey, we need to go above the cap. It will not require an additional appropriation for this. It's just we're going to, move the FTE up in this manner. There's a collaborative conversation, and it's a very simple approval process. The only time we would have to have more than that is if we are, in fact, there will need to be an additional appropriation to do it. Then we're talking public process. So, but I feel like I don't know. I don't want to make an assumption here. So I guess what I'm seeking for is, with the feedback that I have heard, of course, we'll go back, revisit it, and then is there, I'm not hearing a strong resistance to me bringing this back for a second reading.
Ms. Christensen has a question.
Yeah, I just comments. You already answered about the process, which was a question that I'd had, making sure we didn't have to go through like the entire budgeting approval process. So that makes me feel better. Shane's point about the FTEs, like those are like extremely good examples of when we might need to make adjustments. So I don't know how that fits in. I'm not opposed to the part-time adding in, but like maybe those positions count as seasonal or somehow so that they don't have to go through all the hoops to do that. Like if someone's retiring or, you know what I mean? FMLA, those types of situations considered. And then do you mind if we check in with Brian to make sure he doesn't have any other, Madam Chair?
It's okay.
Is there anything?
He came all the way down.
Just to respond to the question of Councilmember DeKaiser on the history, that's all I'd have to add is, like Mr. Shane Pace was mentioning early on in the Bradburn administration, there was some desire to have more flexibility to work with the FTEs within the budget constraints. And the legal counsel at the time researched it and came back and said that essentially the budget constraints, the amount of budget appropriated by the city council was the threshold or the limit put upon administration to operate within, and that the code was kind of silent basically on the FTE. That was his interpretation at the time. So as to respond to that or to include that in the budget, we put a note in the consolidated staffing schedule. It says the staffing schedule is provided for informational purposes only. Positions, ranges, and FTE counts may be adjusted during the fiscal year as allowed by budget appropriations. So that's how we've been operating on for the last more than 8 years. And some of the cases Mr. Shane Pace mentioned on flexibility has come into play. It doesn't happen that often, but my memory on the 3-2 staffing issue was 3-2 staffing was implemented, but we were filling that by backfilling with extra shifts. I don't think we adjusted the appropriation until that went through the council budget process and then the FTE count. I don't think we ever exceeded the FTE count during that process because it was just being backfilled by existing people through overtime and such. But that's my memory on it.
Do you see this being like a significant issue in what you have to do in terms of budgeting, like bringing it back? Or is that
it's just more process to go through and get your approval. It limits the administration's flexibility, so I don't love that, but it's another step to go through.
But it feels similar to like going back 8 years before.
Yeah, I essentially feel like it's the same as our practice before.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question for Brian about that. So what was adopted, that you said you had a note in the consolidated budget?
Yeah.
Was that in the budget book?
It's in the budget book.
Year?
Yeah.
So just by adopting that language, there was a change in policy?
Yeah, we put that in there to clarify So
Okay.
the FTE counts were just for informational, because we track those internally as administration. You know, we're making sure departments are staying within budget and accounts as well.
Cool, thank you.
But, yeah.
Mr. Lynn Pace?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to clarify one comment that Councilmember Hausman made. The way this language is drafted right now, any change to the staffing would require all of the same process as a formal budget amendment. If that's not what you want, you can change it. But right now it says, unless the consolidated staffing schedule is amended by the City Council pursuant to the same procedures required for amending the annual budget. So if you want an easier process to add staffing, you want to change this language. Right now, you have to use the same process you do to amend the budget. That's just the way you've drafted it. If that's not what you want, then fix it before next week. So,
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes.
So just to be clear, there's multiple processes for amending the budget depending on what you're amending. You have to hold a public hearing if you're increasing appropriations. But for example, let's say you're amending the budget to move money from the police department to the fire department, right? But you're not increasing an appropriation necessarily. That doesn't require a public hearing. So I think that the language is, I mean, we're happy to clarify if you'd like to, but I think the point is, I don't know that it specifically requires that unless an appropriation is, a new appropriation is being requested.
I don't want to belabor the point, but if there were money in the budget and somebody wanted to add an employee, right now, amending that staffing document can only be done pursuant to the same procedure required for amending the budget. If that's not what you want, then just change the language to reflect it. That's all.
Madam Chair, could I comment on this too? if you
Yes.
don't mind? So I appreciate what the council's trying to accomplish here, and I think it might be helpful just to think about how you adopt the budget anyway. And I think there's been concerns about the mayor's ability to, and by delegation and assignment, her professional staff is going to be able to function under these perceived constraints. And let's just think about the way the budget works anyway. You don't necessarily craft the budget from ground zero. It's the mayor and her team that does. And if they need additional staffing and people, what this does is just say they have to plan for it. And they're going to put it in the budget. And they're going to put where they need the FTEs. And then when you approve the budget, under this model, and the way I read it, is you'll approve the FTEs along with it. Because the FTEs are essentially, that's the budgetary piece that's really the authority you're using when you are considering a policy like this. And so I see it as just the branch of government working together the way you always do. If Shane has a need for additional FTEs in certain places, then he's not just going to come in and he's going to talk to the mayor, and he's going to talk to Brian, and they're going to tell you why they're increasing the budget, and then they need 3 or 4 new people in order to, say, accomplish this objective. The only difference is here is we're going to put a number to that. And so that's how it'll work practically. The way I see it is that the administration will come in and they'll make recommendations like they always do. There's this additional piece. And look, if something happens mid-year and they need to change it, like they always do, they'll let you know. And I think Lynn's point's a good one if you want to tweak that language a little bit. But I also think that you do budgetary changes with a resolution that's always been pretty simple and hasn't really been that controversial anyway. So maybe you just keep in mind, how does this work practically? And the way I see it is it'll just work the way it's always worked. There'll be dollars, there'll be numbers, and that'll be that. I don't think it'll be that controversial and difficult. And we have Brian saying that this doesn't happen very often anyway. And so I think it's the way I read the policy is it's an additional layer of transparency in terms of what the council wants to do here. So I don't have any concern with it from a policy perspective if you decide that it's good public policy.
Ms. D'Souza has something.
I just thought I'd provide feedback and let you know that I agree with a lot of what you've said, what's been said. You know, I see this as, again, in enacting good governance, trying to create more stability and predictability with regard to the budget every year. And you're right in your report or your memo on this that, you know, the largest portion of our budget is staffing, salaries and benefits and whatnot. And so I see this as, I love collaboration. I want more of it. I think it's amazing. And I see this as defining a process that ensures that collaborative conversation exists. And so I overall support this.
I'll add my support as well. I see it as just nothing more than a safeguard, a notification, a transparency is a good word too. I can't imagine that we would have many, if any, problems, but adding employees adds cost, and we're the budget authority, so we should know. Sure, we would agree if there was a justification for hiring, we'd agree to it. We just need to know what's ahead of us, how to plan for it, whether it has any impacts, and if so, how are we going to address those impacts? So I see it as a good thing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have one
Yes.
remark to share with the council.
Go ahead.
So there has not been any additional employees that have not been authorized through the budget process of this council since I've been mayor. So the firefighters were approved by the council. To backfill the 3-2 policy was through overtime. So there have not been part-time employees hired that have transitioned in anticipation of transitioning to full-time employees since I've been mayor. I just want to put that out there.
Thank you. All right, you need Ms. Hausman. Okay, perfect. All right, we're through the regular agenda with the exception of the consent calendar, which is a final draft of our budget priorities for the council, 3 sets of minutes, and intent to annex. Do I have a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
Motion to adopt the consent calendar.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. All right. All right. Okay, that takes us to agenda planning. Mr. Fratto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just really quickly, so next week is a little bit of a different meeting. We've done this a few times in the past, but we're going to start the meeting with a work session. It's going to be a joint City Council and Planning Commission meeting to kind of kick off the Land Development Code rewrite. So that'll be at the beginning. Tentatively, we have our presentation of our draft housing workshop final report. I say tentative because I have given Liz the very difficult task of putting it in a really nice looking format, and she is working furiously. So I'm giving her a little bit of leeway in case she's not able to get it complete in time by leaving this tentative. But our plan at this point is to do it next week. We've got in reference to the Land Development Code kickoff, James has also brought up that they would like a couple of council members or folks appointed by the council, maybe staff, to serve on the committee for the Land Development Code rewrite. And so we're going to discuss that and see how you'd like to move forward there. We've got the advice and consent voting items for the 2 planning commissioners that were mentioned tonight, and then the 2 voting items for the 2 rezones that were mentioned tonight. The following meeting is canceled on the 17th for caucus night. And then a couple other items one other item that I wanted to update you on is related to our management study. Give me just a second to make sure I've got my notes here. Yes, so Matrix, who is our consultant, they provided us, I actually was this morning, with the draft existing conditions report. And so the things are moving along really well. Currently, Justin, public utility staff, are reviewing that for accuracy. So they'll be getting back to Matrix with that. And then secondly, they are preparing a draft of the public utilities employee survey, which will go out as a part of this. I've let them know that they need to send that to us ahead of time so that we can take it through the survey approval team process, which we'll do. And so things are moving along really well with that. If you have any questions, again, Justin is heading that up on our end, and you're welcome to reach out to him. And I'm sure he'll be able to give you all the feedback that you'd like to have from him. That's it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
All right, Thank you. Council member business. I'll go this way. Ms. Nicole, do you have anything?
No, not this week. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Hausman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A bit of I'll keep it as brief as I can, but I think it's an important update. Want to just share some high-level points from the Woodford, Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling District meeting we had yesterday, actually. So I am going to look at my notes because I think it's really important to get these updates correct. So a couple of things that I want to start with celebrating, and I'll just say Woodford. They implemented several cost-saving measures. We all know this. We all love this, not just me. But efficiencies that yield cost savings, always a great thing to celebrate. So they were able to celebrate several cost-saving measures while retaining all lines of service. So I won't go through all of them, but if you're curious to know specifically what those measures were, let me know, but I wanted to highlight that. The amount of that was, so that cost savings cumulatively was $1,820,000. So I think that's pretty significant. I love processes that result in efficiencies and cost savings. So wanted to celebrate that. And then there was a lot of conversation around some policy updates. Again, much like what we do often is sort of getting our policy in alignment with state code and changes there, some grammatical changes, et cetera. So I won't go through all of those, but I did want to just share an update on the landfill voucher program because you might get questions on that. So they're looking to waive, and again, this will be voted on. It's still, this is the first reading. So if you have feedback, please let me know. But the change would be that the landfill voucher program shall waive fees for up to, it's been 2%. The proposal is to change it to 5% of the number of households serviced by the district. So increasing access to those vouchers. I thought that was something important to share. And then the last thing, no, I don't need, I've got more, but I'm trying to be concise here. The most important thing I want to make sure I give all of you is an update on the Harriman withdrawal. I know you probably are very aware of that. So I'm going to read what I wrote to make sure that I give the proper update here. So during the meeting, the board authorized staff to negotiate Harriman's withdrawal under a cooperative framework that aims to be cost neutral. So that's a specific question I asked. I wanted to make sure that if we were adopting any kind of a framework, that we were not necessarily setting ourselves up, our residents who do pay fees through the service provided by Woodford, that they were in some way going to have to absorb these additional impacts. So through some really great analysis, they have identified ways to absorb this so that our residents and all of the other cities' residents will not be impacted. So the intent is it will be cost neutral. And then rather than fighting an inevitable exit, given some state legislation that I imagine maybe we'll hear an update on, the board chose to negotiate favorable terms now and focus energy on strengthening the district. So there's some really good conversation that was had around what does it look like to strengthen the district, a conversation about having a specific board retreat to really think about what does it look like to come together as cities that will remain as part of the district and really kind of create this vision of how do we remain strong and not and keep this cost neutral, because I just stressed that was really important to Sandy City. So the board and the board retreat and other things will focus on strengthening the district for remaining members and additional operational improvements. So like I just highlighted. Obviously there's a little bit of tension between this member withdrawal and how that impacts the district's future. So continuing to focus on operational excellence and being responsive to our customers' needs. So that's a very high-level summary. It was a very long, lots of good conversation, but I did want to bring that update back. If you want further insights, and I have it, but hopefully that gives you kind of an update in general terms. And that's all I had. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Christensen?
Yeah, just two things. Thanks for everyone's patience last week with parent-teacher conferences. That was new and exciting. And then also you see these rose plantings on your desk. Mark is very excited about this. And so just wanted to make sure you all saw that and know that anyone's invited to come help plant these beautiful roses in the cemetery.
I will be there. Count me in. All right. Yeah, for LPC, we're in our last week. I'll let Ryan, since he's sat through the entire meeting, he ought to be able to give the full report. But I do want to say that I have felt accomplishment this year in terms of our legislators, especially the Sandy legislators, listening to us and acting on our requests. We've diffused some issues, and sometimes we think they're diffused only for them to come back to life. But I feel like our legislators this year in particular have been really responsive and listening to Sandy and voting in our interests. And so I think I just wanted to comment on that. I was able to attend Barb's farewell. She's heading on to Provo, and we will miss her, but I'm sure Provo is lucky to get her, and I'm sure she'll do a really good job there. And thanks to Ben and Jetta and Lois for the tour that we took of the new recreation center site. It was, to those of you who couldn't make it, it was right after a big rainstorm, and we did get a little bit of rain, and there was a lot of mud. So whoever chose not to, or came up with a good excuse to not be there, I think maybe you did the good thing. I got into my car and stepped in and then lifted my foot and saw that I had covered my carpet mat with mud. But anyway, that's the way it goes on construction sites. So that's it for now. I'll let Ryan take over the legislative part. Ms. Stroud, do you have anything tonight?
Thank you. Nope. I was just going to add with this that Mark has invited the youth council, and it sounds like that we will be there. So the youth council will be there. Last year at the cemetery, we tidied up around some of the headstones, but super excited to kind of see what they can do with this and all these rose bushes. So that'll be a fun event. So yeah, love to have you guys there. We'll be inviting them. He's provided 40 invitations for all of our kids to have that. So that will be good. And I'm planning on, my meeting, because daytime schedule, very inflexible schedule, but going with Ben over to Alta Canyon on Thursday.
Awesome.
So, be able to see that, watched it a few times, driven by over to Home Depot, but it'll be fun. So, thank you.
Mr. Souza, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Again, yes, thanks to the Parks and Rec crew for the Alta Canyon tour. It is really nice to see. I do look forward to seeing it again in more finished state so that my mind can wrap itself around and make sense of the plans. And so, great job. Thank you for inviting us. And I also just want to thank Brian Kelly for being so on top of the Senior Center updates. Really appreciate it. They really appreciate it. And I got your most recent one. I haven't responded, so here's my public response, and thank you so much for always providing those. Appreciate it.
You done? All right. The mayor's report is next.
Thanks. I want to thank our friends at the Emerald Hills Institute for hosting the Interfaith Ramadan dinner. Mayors from all over the south end of the valley, faith leaders came together for a wonderful dinner and reflections on sharing and building peace, especially at this spring season of Ramadan. We also had the first meeting of the Mayor's Intersection Safety Team, focusing on the Alta High School intersection. The working group met last week, and I want to thank Council Member DeKaiser and Hausman for joining us, along with residents from the area, and Katie Atkinson, who was the group moderator. We got a lot of great feedback, and we're able to share with the MIS team, reporting on not just having the lighted stop signs installed, but that we also have removed a tree that several people brought to our attention, obstructed the view, And there has been utility work to install a street light at the southwest corner of the intersection. So those are some short-term improvements. And then we are beginning to work with the consultant for the major infrastructure review and study. So laying out that process and also inviting our team and others to participate on that study process, and really excited about the feedback and the opportunity for community collaboration. So thank you, council members, for attending. And Coffee with the Cops is coming up on March 14th. That's not this Saturday, but next. So that's going to be at the coffee shop that's at the Smith's Shopping Center on 94th and Highland Drive. It's Ojai Coffee, and that's going to be held at 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. There will be police officers there, a lot of information, victim advocates, our VIPs, and of course the canine officers. So it's a great time to come out with your family, meet the officers in a non-enforcement environment, and get to know your officers who are responsible for your neighborhood. So please, if you live in that area in East Sandy, 94th and Highland, Councilmember Nickel, Councilmember Sharkey, please put that on your schedule for Saturday, March 14th, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. We'd love to see you there. And that's all. Thank you.
And Mr. DeKaiser, I am so sorry that I skipped you inadvertently. Please go ahead.
No worries at all, Madam Chair. When I had the experience, I was terrible at recognizing online participants. So thank you. I too just have a couple items. Like the mayor said last week, I participated with Councilmember Hausman in the inaugural MIST meeting. That's the mayor's intersection safety team, and I'm grateful to the mayor for organizing it. We had a great meeting and discussed the elements that the mayor already detailed. I am a little unclear on the scope of it, but I would hope to see the group discuss more intersections in the future just tonight. We have residents talking to us about 86th South and 10th East. So maybe that's something they could talk about, and look forward to these great people being continued advocates for safety in our city. The other thing I wanted to comment on was last week we talked about the Granite study, and then it was sent out to the council almost immediately, which I appreciate. I just wanted to note that I read it, and it was pretty surprising to me. It seemed very basic and contained seemingly little qualitative analysis on what I would think are really complicated intricacies of the situation. And it contained some elements that I thought were concerning. Most significantly is the estimated tax burden on being annexed into Sandy was nearly double any of the other three options, those being self-funding, having a contract with Sandy, or continuing with their current municipal services district. And that's odd to me because that is counter to the information that I was seeing from the administration many months ago leading up to this. So I'm really interested in these future discussions and making sure that everyone is all on the same page as this process moves forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Pace, we'll come back to you, and if you feel like you want to address that at a really high level, feel free.
I'd like to thank Councilmember DeKaiser for bringing that item for discussion. Now that the council has taken action to initiate the annexation, we will be notifying residents in the Granite community. And we've also notified Salt Lake County of our reservations over the deficiencies of the annexation report too. So we'd be happy to share that correspondence with the council so that you're up to speed.
Yeah, that letter to the county will answer a lot of the questions that Aaron had, but on a high level, the main difference is they purposely exclude the Unified Fire Authority tax and the Unified Police Department tax. When you add that into the formula, of course, we're much lower. And so they were comparing apples to oranges. Their other big issue was their anticipated revenues off of sales tax. It was just flat out wrong. So
Anything else in your CAO report?
No.
All right, thank you. Recreation Center construction report, is that you tonight, Ben? Yes. Okay.
So we appreciate the council coming up and visiting with us last week, and then we got that on Thursday this coming week. We continue to have our weekly construction meetings with Layton Construction and VCBO Architects. What's exciting happening this week is, or has been happening this week, is the pillars got put up, and now they're connecting the roof from pillar to pillar. So over the field house and also over the basketball court. The other key item is, I think when we were up there, we saw a bunch of blue tarps that look like blue tarps over the basketball court. That was in preparation to lay the cement on the basketball court, so that has now been laid. So you can actually see the formation of it, and it's nice to see a roof on it. When you step into the space and look up, you're like, okay, I can start envisioning this. They also drained the pool so that they could re-hook up the plumbing filtration system to the pool. So they were doing a bunch of practice of making sure that the pipes were going the right direction and getting that all set back up. And other than that, that's what my report is for tonight. Any questions on that?
Thank you, Ben. Mr. Meekum.
Thank you. I was going to start with homelessness, but let's talk garbage. So what we were talking about just a few minutes ago, House Bill 429 does deal with special district amendments, specifically around garbage disposal. And so that is going through right now. It's on the Senate third reading calendar. In other words, it's already passed the House. It's over in the Senate. And that just creates a process for this to happen. And so what'll take place, though, is it still does provide that anyone, in this case Harriman, who was part of it when they made the capital decisions, will still be part of those capital decisions. So in other words, everything that was bonded against their participation still is the case. So that will help from everyone else who's remaining standpoint. All right, let's talk homelessness. The House Bill 596 is the bill that's going through the process right now. Today's Tuesday. It's the last day or the last week of the session, and since it's Tuesday, it means that every bill that originates in the House has to pass out of the House. Every one that originates in the Senate can pass out of the Senate. There are ways to get around that, but as a basic rule of thumb, that's the case. So House Bill 596, in order to continue, needs to pass out tonight. They are going to stay until whatever time they need to. Last I checked, it was item number 12 on the third reading calendar, and Senator Collimore is going to be the Senate sponsor. So I have no doubt in my mind it's going to get out of the House tonight and move forward. So what this does is we spent a lot of time on it this week. Shout out to the Utah League of Cities and Towns. Molly Wheeler is the one who's been taking point on this. She, in collaboration with us and other shelter cities, came up with many revisions to the original bill. Steve Elison, Representative Elison, is the one who's running this. He accepted all of those changes. And so what that means is that there will be all of the state preemption on land uses out. And there will be a one-time increase on the funding, so the non-shelter cities will participate an extra 15% one time, and that will go to help out West Valley City, who's had the unenviable position of having to host a shelter, but also having to pay into the fund. They're the only ones that are caught in this kind of catch-22, the way that the definitions worked earlier on. So this is going to help them. It won't impact us at all because we're not, as a shelter city, we're not billed any of this amount. So anyway, that will continue. And so kudos to the league and Molly, like I said, who's taken point on that. Property tax. There's a couple of pieces on property tax. One that we've talked about extensively is House Bill 236. This is already passed out of the House, so it's in the Senate right now. It's on the second reading calendar, circled, so they'll get to it here pretty soon. And the main provision in this that relates to us is that if we contemplate a tax increase, so whether the mayor's budget comes out with an anticipated tax increase or if the council decides there needs to be a tax increase, we have a window between May 1 and June 8 where we have to state at a public meeting that a fiscal tax that we taxing entity are considering levying a tax rate that exceeds the fiscal year tax and entity certified tax rate. So if we're going to up the tax rate, we have to make that announcement in that window. Otherwise, with the window's gone, and we can't come back and redo that. And then the other part, then it anticipates that we would adopt the higher budget, but in order to do that, excuse me, on a budgetary line item, we would have to set aside the money equal to the amount that we would receive, and would also necessitate that we have a document that explains to people, here's what the budget was before, and if there's a tax increase, this is what it would look like after, and so they can match up where the money would actually go, you know, department by department. So that's what we would explain to folks, and that would be the new requirement coming into that.
Ryan, is that one effective this year or next year, or
This,
when?
May 6th. It's the normal.
This year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Senate Bill 97. This has gone through many iterations. This is the one that had a 5% cap. So, in terms of property tax, it originally said that any local government, meaning cities, counties, school districts, cannot increase taxes any more than 5%. That was eliminated on the last substitute. The one that is before the Senate right now, which again, Senate bill has to pass out of the Senate tonight. They're at least going to talk about it. I think there's a strong chance of it passing out, but you know, we'll see. What this does effectively for us is it doesn't have a huge impact, because a lot of cities have been carrying on a lot of fund balance, and in the past you used to cap out at 25%. 5-6 years ago that increased to 35%, but we're at 12%. So no matter kind of what version of this passes out, Brian says, hey, don't worry, we keep it at 12, so it shouldn't be that big a deal for us. But what it would do, it puts some teeth into it. So cities right now, if you go beyond the cap, so you've got a general fund, and if you add on and say, well, I'm going to keep, you know, I want to keep 35% in addition to my funds, that's fine. But if you want to go to 40-45%, what would happen is the state would send the city a letter and say, bad city, you need to get back to 35%. Please do that right away. Some cities would take the letter and, you know, probably, I don't know this to be the case, but they would probably ignore it because there was really no teeth to it. It just said you need to do this. But this would change that. It would, if after a 5-year period of time, if you were still carrying those kind of balances, it would take it out of your tax rate. And so there's real teeth in there to lower your tax rate to compensate for that extra amount that you're holding on above. And this time it has a range, 25, 28, and 30%, depending on the size of your budget. But if you carry more than that, they would say, we're going to claw that back, and we're going to do that by decreasing the tax rate. All right, a couple more topics. Let's talk land use for a second. This Senate Bill 284, this is the one that deals with planning commissions. So there's a number of changes in this bill, but one thing that would do is it kind of, in some cases, planning commissions haven't been making what it calls timely decisions. And so it gives the council the ability to just to pull an item from the planning commission and deal with it on a city council level. There have been other instances where planning commissioners have been advocating on behalf or against certain things that have come before, and so it creates restrictions around the planning commission as it is a quasi, it's a decision-making body, and so it puts some more guardrails around that.
Ryan, quick question on
yes.
that. Is that a may or a shall?
Is which part?
The city council may pull it.
May.
Okay, thank you.
May. Yeah, it's there isn't a way to do it today with these changes. Then there is a method for the council to be able to take something to the council in order to make a decision to respect the landowner's application to get a decision made, so that they can move forward. All right, housing. My last topic that I wanted to bring up.
Sure. Ryan, I'm
yes.
sorry. So about that one, what are the qualifications by which a council may pull that off?
It's vague. It mostly talks about timeliness.
I guess if it's on the agenda, then it would be assumed that it's up for discussion,
Mhm.
right? And so
Correct.
I guess I'm a little confused about that. I didn't know if you had any more clarity on how
It's
that works
I would
practically.
characterize it as intentionally vague.
Okay.
Meaning that there's some flexibility in there, and that if you as a council deem that it hasn't been made on a timely basis, then it gives you a mechanism in order to deal with that problem.
Okay, thank you.
Last topic I'll bring up is housing, House Bill 492. Another one of those is a compromise bill that actually does several things. Right now, there is last year, there's a $70 million pot here in Salt Lake County that was created as a grant to enable regionally significant infrastructure projects to move forward. So the problem that they're trying to solve is if you have a bunch of entitled lots that are not able to move forward. So Harriman is usually the poster child for this case study, because it's happening right now. They've got 7,000 entitled lots that could come to the market but can't because they don't have a water tank. And so of this money, they have an application in for $50 million to build a water tank that then would unlock around 7,000 units within Harriman. And so this is what this bill does. It expands it. Last year it was $70 million. This year they're adding another 70 here in Salt Lake County. And then in addition to that, they're doing another $100 million as a loan in other parts of the state. And so, so basically, the policy issue they're trying to get at, like I said, is trying to, because cities have been very diligent about bringing entitled lots to the marketplace, and there are 109,000 at last count around the state of entitled lots, but have no way to get to the market because of lack of infrastructure. So the conversation has really turned from saying, hey, cities, you need to create more, get more lots to the marketplace, to a realization that there are problems in our way in order to make that happen. So that's the main goal of this bill. Okay, so I'm sure next week we'll probably have another conversation, and I'll be able to say this is what happened, and this is what happened, this is what happened, but stay tuned, it'll all be over on Friday.
So Ryan, yesterday we talked about SB 284, local land use modifications of Fillmore bill that we had supported, that was merging with 177, I think, that one didn't, anyway. Is that one on its way to passage? That one is one where that mandates that cities adopt an external ADU ordinance by October.
Correct.
Is that one headed toward passage?
I would say yes. This is, it's a Senate bill. So it has passed the Senate. It was in a House hearing this morning. What the House did is they returned it to rules because they're out of time. That's not a problem because it just has to have a hearing in one body. So it had a hearing. Rules Committee can also do it, but that's another story. But in this case, it already passed out of the Senate, so it doesn't have to have a House hearing. And yeah, I would predict that it'll be that it's on the House third reading calendar right now. And I predicted that it is one of those that will come out, and it does. It requires municipalities. We would fall under this definition that we would need to allow a detached accessory dwelling unit as a permitted use in certain zones. So that's kind of the general idea. That's the same one that dealt with the Planning Commission. That bill has got probably 10 or 12 different topics, but you are correct. That is one of them.
Okay. That one's one we'll need to take some action on then if it passes. All right.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Can I have a little bit more time?
Sure.
Thank you. In an effort to keep you updated on the Arbor building, Brian would like to update you on the selection process for the bonds.
Good evening. Now, just to give you an update, we're scheduled to close next week on the 13th on the building, and everything's going smoothly. We did select a lender on the bonds. It's Webster Bank. You may or may not have heard of them before, but they are headquartered in Connecticut. They have a strong presence in New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts area, but they're a commercial bank, as well as they do some retail and public financing, and their public financings across the United States. And they're a strong candidate. They had the most competitive bid on the interest rate and the term, as far as the callable flexibility. There is, I know I talked to you about flexibility is one of our key attributes we were looking for. This one is, there is a call for 3 years, so we wouldn't be able to call the bonds for the first 3 years, but I don't anticipate that being an issue. The only one of the bidders had total flexibility with no call, but they had a reset of it as a variable interest rate that reset at 10 years. And we've seen some bad experience with that. So we elected to go with this fixed rate option. It had the best rate, even though it has a 3-year call. So anyway, I just wanted to give you an update on that.
So what kind of rate are we talking about? Is it better than we saw in the?
Slightly. It's
Okay,
5.42 overall. And that's a blended rate between our taxable and tax exempt.
Do you remember what each one is?
I think it's 5.5 on 5.5 point something, or 5.5 something on the taxable and 4.2 on the non-taxable.
Okay.
And we broke it out separately because the council chambers project is tax exempt, where the building is taxable because we'll be leasing it and using it for non-governmental purposes, a large percentage of it. So, any other questions?
The reason for the delay on the closing, which we thought was going to happen on March 2nd, is what was the reason?
That was due to the seller not meeting the requirements for the estoppels that were required, and also the repairs that we were asking for to be done.
So it cost us nothing.
Yeah, there was
for
no
the delayed
cost on
closing.
that.
Okay.
Yeah, that was factors built into the contract that if they didn't meet it, we could extend it up to 10 days. And so we did that, made sure they were going to fix all of those things.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I see Councilmember DeKaiser has his hand up too, but have they correct or provided the information yet, or do you know when you anticipate the estoppels?
Dan Nelson told me they've provided all the estoppels.
Okay, so it shouldn't be delayed yet again.
Right.
Okay.
We're on track for next week.
Okay.
And the repairs have been done. So.
Mr. DeKaiser, go ahead.
Thank you. Just since the legislative session ends on Friday, I just wanted to take a moment to recognize Mr. Meekum as he completes his first legislative session, having served on this council previously. And here I really appreciated how thoughtful and steady and deeply engaged member of the body he was, and it has been really great to watch him carry that same diligence and commitment to public service in his new role as our senior policy director, and just love how he's continued to represent our community with integrity and seriousness, and even just explaining all those different rules and stuff like that really shines a light on how well he's done. So thank you so much for your continued service for the city, Mr. Meekum, and congratulations on a successful first term at the Capitol.
All right, that is the end of our agenda, and I will accept a motion to adjourn if one would like to give one.
Move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you and good night, everyone.